Okay, and happy Friday, PSWs and friends across Ontario and Canada. It is time again for PSW podcast where we come live to you guys every single Friday at 11 a.m. and we talk about everything PSW, the white, the black, and especially the gray area. I am Miranda Romanowicz. I'm the CEO of the Ontario PSW Association and host of PSW podcast. And today I'm joined by the CEO of HSCPOA, Mr. Trevor Lee. Thanks so much for coming and joining me today, Trevor.
My very pleasure. Thank you, Miranda.
Yeah, so we're here today to talk about and myth bust when it comes to HSCPOA and all of these rumors and all of these things that are floating around the PSW world in relation to the regulation of personal support workers. But we're going to start this off, guys. I'm going to introduce you to Trevor because at the end of this, I think you're going to like him. So, Trevor is the CEO of the Health and Supportive Care Providers Oversight Authority. Mouthful, but we call it HSCPOA. And Trevor graduated from the University of Waterloo in chartered accountancy. He started with the public accounting firm Deloitte. Trevor left Deloitte in 1995 and joined the Elliott community in Guelph, which we're all very familiar with, as their chief financial officer. The Elliott community is a continuum of care offering long-term care, retirement care, and services and independent life lease accommodations to over 450 residents. Trevor spent 22 years at the Elliott community, the majority of those as its CEO. He has a thorough understanding and appreciation for the work of the personal support worker over those 2 decades. You would. Although the positions may have shifted over time from care aides to healthcare aides and the now recognized personal support worker, his appreciation for the work that staff provide to Ontario's healthcare system is unwavering. He was a strong advocate for the advancement of compensation for PSWs, the focus on shifting the balance from a predominantly part-time to a full-time PSW workforce, the dream, recognizing that extending appreciation for PSWs in any way possible was meaningful. His engagement with the round-the-clock care that PSWs provide was always demonstrated with his town hall staff engagements that started at 6 a.m. in the morning and had their last sessions at midnight was an example of how he valued a PSW's work-life balance. He wanted to be accessible at their convenience rather than his own. Although he carries a very heavy responsibility, he is available and genuinely invested in making sure that the regulatory oversight of PSWs is fair, transparent, and supportive to increasing the respect and awareness of PSWs in Ontario and protecting their reputation from those that do not uphold the standards of PSW. So thanks again, Trevor, for joining us. I think
Thank
that
you,
was
Miranda, for
really
having me.
thorough. I think that was thorough. And I think the PSWs, out of all of that, I think the most favorite part, at least for me, is the fact that you really advocated for full-time hours for the PSWs.
Yeah.
So that was really great to hear. Really great to hear. So we're just going to launch right into it because I know they want to know, and I'm not going to bark around the bush. But for the listeners and the viewers who may not be familiar with the HSCPOA, what is the mandate and why was it created?
So our main purpose is public protection. So the oversight that the HSCPOA organization is bringing is a commitment towards public protection. But I think it's also, recognizing the valuable role that PSWs play in Ontario and have played in Ontario through some of the most significant events, SARS into most recent with the COVID for pandemic for the sequence of years, the post-pandemic new norm that we are operating under, the infection control practices that are in place. All of these things are important aspects that PSWs play a vital role in. And I think that the organization and its creation is a recognition of really the prominence that PSWs play in the province. And we want to make sure that's recognized.
And that's a good point, right? There, I always say, hairdressers are regulated, all of the trades are somewhat regulated, but personal support workers who do the most vital and personal care to the most vulnerable were not. So it never made sense to me. So I think this is a very good thing. So how does the authority ensure the safety and accountability in the PSW and supportive care workforce? So how do you guys, what is the plan? What are you guys doing?
So all HSCPOA registered PSWs have had to meet the education or experience requirements for registration, and then with that, they demonstrate their commitment towards providing safe care, and that they are also ensuring that with the PSW workforce in place, if they are regulated and if they are HSCPOA registrants, that the public, the employers, other staff members can count on the level of commitment that they have to their code of ethics and the conduct that they carry. Having the public registry, having all the information available is also helpful to ensure the accuracy of our PSW workforce, that they are who they say they are and that they are actually demonstrated with their credentials. So it's a way for us having a greater level of clarity and transparency in the sector. And I think that PSWs deserve that level of recognition and acknowledgement in the healthcare space.
And I like to hear that too, because I mean, a lot of times PSWs, I guess the misconception for us is we only do, 6 months of training or 8 months of training, but in that amount of time, we are learning vital and important things that we use to care for our most vulnerable. And to have that recognition on that level is definitely something I never thought I'd see. So, that's a real promising thing. And now just to kind of get into the nitty gritty of what you and I have talked numerous times on the misconceptions about HSCPOA. So, like, we've been hearing a lot of things from PSWs. No one really knows what the heck's going on. Everyone's really confused as to, some are saying they're going to lose their certificate. Some are saying their certificate's expired. Can we get into that a little bit, just to kind of make them relax?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I think that is the theme of this coughing conversation. It's a theme, I think, a bit of the work that we're doing in the healthcare space is myth busting. So I'll start off by just saying that one of the biggest misconceptions is that the registrant process is complicated, it's difficult, and it's going to take a lot of time, and there's going to be costs associated with it. The ability for most of Ontario's PSWs, and I say most in that that's representative of hospital, long-term care, retirement, community-based care, agency care, most are going to come in through Pathway 1 and Pathway 2. And with that, there's a large volume of graduated PSWs after July 1st of 2014 who will most likely take the approach with Pathway 1, educated in Ontario. For that, just going straight to the base facts, if you have a transcript, if you have a certificate of completion, and you have a criminal reference check, which we actually assist our registrants or applicants in arranging for, you are on your way towards the pathway to a registrant status after review. Your review could take anywhere from 1 to 2 days once all that material is submitted and is verified, and you are now becoming a HSCPOA registrant PSW. For those who are educated prior to that date, and I do recognize, I'm not going to hide around it, July 1st, 2014, sensitive date for a lot of people, but not untoward in the event that people are still working in the space of PSWs in Ontario. They can work with their employers to get an attestation that they meet the qualifications of PSW standard, and that they are delivering quality, safe, ethical care. And employers are asked to participate in that attestation. We've also worked with employers to streamline the way that information can be submitted on behalf of their valued PSWs and their employee, so that it's easier for the employers too. So I'll just wrap this first part up to say the easiest misconception to clear is it's not complicated. It just takes a little bit of time, and our staff are here to assist everyone in that journey. Through the interactions that we have with our registration team, we will help you get through all of those points to get to your registration application completion, and then registration consideration, and then welcoming you into the HSCPOA PSW register. The second, I think, misconception is that this has been brought about to police. And I'm just going to address that concept. It is not brought about to police. It's actually to elevate those individuals that are committed to safe, quality, ethical care and differentiate them from those that may not. And those that are not, we will have a process, a fair and transparent complaints and investigation process, which will help to remediate behaviors and to reinstill the confidence. Again, our driving mandate, North Star for us, is the public trust in public safety. And we can do that collaboratively with our PSW, valued PSW workforce in Ontario, not in an adversarial way. So first off, we are here. We are going to be working with PSWs. We're going to be, as you know, Miranda, we're working with you as in a PSW association to try and ensure that the valued PSWs in Ontario certainly understand the details, that if there's any questions, that they get those questions accurately answered, and that there's no misperception spread throughout. So for us, it's just clarity, transparency, and just having great conversations towards moving folks into our register.
No, and thank you for that, Trevor, because it's that explanation needed to be said. Number one, number two, at the end of the day, I mean, I like to say the majority of PSWs do want to be regulated in just for the plain fact of not only the recognition of their skill set and their loyalty and devotion to those in their care, but also, getting rid of the bad apples. There's a lot of bad apples, unfortunately. Over the years, the association's dealt with it, and there needs to be a consequence to those actions. And that's, and there never was before, unless it was a criminal situation. But in this case, it's just like the nurses. You do something wrong, you're going to be accountable for it. You have to be held accountable for it. So it's, to me, I think that's very promising. And I think that, PSW should be more open, in my mind, to having this happen. It's not going to be an easy road, let's be honest. This is going to be very bumpy. It's going to be a lot of different roads that we wind up going down because things will change here or there. But at the end of the day, the part that I love is that I know you, Trevor, genuinely have the PSW's best interests at heart, which is something I don't normally say about anything regulatory. So, and now I said it publicly. So here we are. So, I think that's a really good thing. So I think another thing too, like a lot of PSWs talk about is, how does HSCPOA look at the training? So we have a lot of PSWs that, are community college graduates, career college graduates, Board of Education. So how do you guys determine what is good and what isn't?
So all of the PSWs that are under consideration through the application registration process, they all have to demonstrate that they meet the required skills outlined in the Ministry of Colleges and Universities PSW standards. That is often easily identifiable in the curriculum of recognized educational programs that you've described. And for those where there isn't that formal education, we look at the skills and abilities that are acquired through training on the job. And I'm speaking to the Pathway 2 part. And then that is where the employers provide the attestation that, in their opinion, based on their interpretations of the MCU PSW standards, that the PSWs in their employ are meeting those expectations and delivering those care services in an ethical manner each and every single day. So it isn't a barrier to the employer and the PSW working in their employ. It's just going to be a conversation to be had where the PSWs are asking and working with their employers to facilitate the attestation in that unique circumstance. But most, again, are going to be coming in from the date stamp of 2014 to current. There will be a large portion of individuals that will be coming in through accredited educational and recognized programs with Ministry of Colleges and Universities.
No, and that's good. I just want to point out to the PSWs too that are watching this, the conversation of prior to 2014 between HSCPOA and OPSWA and the government is not over. So that conversation is still very much ongoing. I'm not going to share information about it. I can't. But the conversation has definitely not dead in the water, because I know that's what they're going to say, Trevor. They're going to ask and say, are you still not fighting for grandfathering and so on and so forth? So the conversations are still very active. It's just, as you guys are well aware, and if you're not, anything to do with government takes a very long time in order to get anything to pass, because you have to have proof and data and conversations with many different people in order to enact any sort of change when it comes to anything government. So I just want to put that to bed before we continue on with the conversation.
And just if I could add to that, that isn't a stipulation that is set by HSCPOA or actually even available to be reconsidered. It is actually form and content of the legislation. So as both OPSWA and HSCPOA have interactions with the Ministry of Health, we would be having those conversations. So it's just for clarity purposes, it is not a HSCPOA driven decision. It's one that we are obligated to adhere to until and or if that changes.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that, because that's a really good point. Just so you guys are watching, it's not HSCPOA that made that decision. It's not OPSWA that made that decision, because I've had that a few times. It's the Ministry of Health, and I believe from what we were told, it has to do with the standard of the PSW program. I think the first one, the standard was put in place in 2014. And so that's what they're kind of going off of right now. But like we said, conversations are still happening, change can still occur. But in the meantime, when we're talking about the PSWs from 2014 until now, I mean, I'm kind of excited about this because it's going to be a whole new world for PSWs. I do know that the PSWs are very concerned, and this is a bit off cuff, but they're concerned about cost. They're concerned about how much this is going to cost them, because a lot of them are members of our association as well. And they want to have our membership because of the insurance and the discounts and the professional development. But then they're afraid of what it's going to cost, because they're hearing from their colleagues out in Alberta, where the HCAs out in Alberta are being put underneath the Licensed Practical Nursing Association. And they're looking at somewhere between $300 to $500 a year to maintain their license out there. And so how would you, sorry, I'm throwing it on you, but how would you, react to that? Like what are your thoughts surrounding that?
So I don't know the specifics of the legislation that Alberta is applying to set their fee setting practice, but I can certainly give the assurances to your PSWs on this conversation that right in the actual memorandum of understanding, which is a document between the ministry and us at HSCPOA, and it's transparently aware or available on our website. You could look at it. There is language that is specifically on this topic, that they do not want to set any fee setting that would be inherently financially disadvantageous to the PSWs, which could cause a disruption in the volume of PSWs that work in Ontario's healthcare system. So the ministry is very clear that it's sensitive to a cost-based analysis. But just right now, I can say to you, registration is free. There is no cost to the registration process. And at the very outset of December 1st of 2027, for those who are in the pathway to consideration of trained employer PSW in Ontario, that there is no cost for that entire time frame. There is a potential for a fee setting strategy. Again, this is transparent in the legislation, that there is the ability for a registrant paid model, a ministry continued paid model, or a hybrid model. But nothing has been established as far as any fee setting practices of any kind at this point. The only cost, and I just, because I don't want someone to say he said no cost and there is, if you do not have a valid criminal reference check within the last 12 months, you would be required on your submission of your application to arrange for a criminal reference check. This is different than the vulnerable sectors check that sometimes get misunderstood, because those take a number of weeks to obtain and they are higher cost. We have a negotiated lesser cost based on volume with HSCPOA and our agency that we've engaged with, not our agency, but agency, CERTN, CERTN is the organization. And if I'm getting the value correct, it's like $23.60 to have your criminal reference check completed. It can take up to a number of hours and or a day or so. It is not lengthy in time to obtain. So again, going back to the myth busting of complexity of application, if you have a certificate of completion, an accurate and up-to-date transcript of your education, and you work with our software, or if you have a vulnerable sector check or a criminal reference check that's been obtained for any other purpose, like your employer, that's valid and within the last 12 months, you will use what I sometimes use as a funny little term, the American Express Fast Pass to registrant status, because you have the required content that is really the bulk of your application under Pathway 1.
That's a really great explanation. I mean, we also don't use the VSS at OPSWA either. All of our PSWs go through the CMJT or C. I'm getting it wrong, but the basically the local and national police checks. So it's very similar to HSCPOA as we continue to somewhat align. So that kind of goes to my next question: is how does HSCPOA collaborate with OPSWA? Because we get a lot of those questions.
So that's a great question. I think it's one that we are continuously evolving as our relationship is developing. But at the very basic, and this is available on one of our info sheets on our website, the difference between HSCPOA and a PSW association, and it names OPSWA. OPSWA's purpose is focused on advocacy for PSWs, and I applaud that advocacy. And in the years that I've worked within healthcare, I think that everything we can do to raise the awareness and the highlight of the work that PSWs deliver each and every single day is an important aspect. And to you, Miranda, I applaud the work that you're doing on behalf of your membership to keep that conversation alive and strong. For us at HSCPOA, our mandate is public protection, very, very clearly stipulated. We would be unable to participate in, and nor should we be in any kind of a lobbying or advocacy avenue. But there is value in the data that the registry is going to be collecting, which can clarify some often misperceptions by government, by members of the sector, by healthcare, whether it's hospital, long-term care, or otherwise. How many functioning PSWs are there in the province of Ontario right now? How many of them are working in hospital? How many of them are in long-term care? How many of them are retirement or community-based agency care services for individuals in their private settings, their homes? We don't have that data. We can probably have rough numbers that are assembled from various points of contact, but we don't have data. If we have the full register of PSWs, so if I were to think into a future where we have all the PSWs in Ontario are registered with HSCPOA, we have data that can now be very easily accessible and available to organizations to have those difficult workforce planning conversations at a ministry level with the province or an advocacy level towards the province and the Ministry of Health on behalf of the PSW OPSWA members, as an example, or other. But there's a lot of synergies that our work is going to create by moving towards the full mandatory registration modeling at some point when that happens, or if that happens. But having a good handle on the volume of PSWs in Ontario can do nothing but better the abilities for us to have good, solid conversations about the treatment and the supports for PSWs.
I would agree, Trevor. I think not having that data, I mean, coming from, from us, we've been around 15 and a half years. The only data we have is through our association. We don't even have all the PSWs in Ontario. And it's been difficult, and for the PSWs watching, to enact changes. If you don't have proper data, if you can't show without a doubt that this is an issue here, that is an issue there, then it kind of gets pushed by the wayside because you got to have that proof and that data. And how do we better the profession? We need that data in order to know how to better this profession and make it something that's a profession of choice, as opposed to a fly by night kind of, I'm going to get into it and then not really make it a career. So I think that's really, really important. And we do enjoy working with you guys. I think it's definitely interesting. It's great when there's that open lines of communication that we can, because we have our thumb on the heartbeat of the PSW. We talk to them every day. Their voices, you're actually hearing our voices, Trevor, which is great. The PSW's voices are hitting HSCPOA, just for the PSWs watching, which is an important thing to know, that Trevor does listen. Trevor and his team. They do very much listen to what the PSWs are saying, and that is why Trevor is here today. So I think, the future of PSWs is, in my mind's eye, very bright. Like I said, there's a lot of conversations that still need to be had, but we'll take those away and hopefully maybe we have some updates in the coming years. But as it stands right now, it's important if you graduated 2014 and after to get underneath the HSCPOA ASAP. And if you're prior to 2014 and if you're currently employed by an employer, then get on that and get underneath the HSCPOA as well. PSWs always demand recognition, they demand respect, rightfully so. And this is that avenue. It's like I always say, Trevor, when we get asked, they say, well, what's the difference between HSCPOA and OPSWA? And I say, well, HSCPOA protects the public and OPSWA protects the PSW. That is literally our mandates, breaking it right down to that. So we don't have a whole lot of time left on this PSW podcast, but I'm going to ask you one last question. And that question is, what inspired you personally to lead the HSCPOA?
Well, that's an interesting question, and one that I really have to just say. 22 years spent in healthcare. I know you're short on time, but I went to work at the Elliott for a brief period of time on my career journey, and I fell in love with the delivery of care and services for residents in their various care needs. I came to appreciate PSWs, RNs, and RPNs, and the very valiant work they deliver each and every day to affect and impact the lives of residents. And I left working in healthcare to spend about 8 years at the city of Guelph in municipal government. And when the opportunity presented itself to come back to this organization at this particular point, at a formative stage, in a space where we're going to develop a registry oversight for PSWs and elevate the prominence of their roles in the province of Ontario's healthcare system, I can't imagine a better place to be and more rewarding work to deliver. And for me, the legacy that I'd like to achieve is that by the end of a time that I've spent with HSCPOA, that there is an elevated reference and accountability by the public for the important and valued work that PSWs in Ontario deliver each and every single day. It's a calling. I would say that the majority of individuals I worked with over those 2 decades, they loved working as PSWs, and they appreciated the relationships that they established with their residents, patients, or clients. And it was not simply a paycheck. It was a commitment towards a career and an aspirational feeling of goodness in them. And I think that having an organization that I can work with and lead towards amplifying that is just going to be an extremely rewarding part of my career, the highlight of my career.
I love your career. See, Trevor, because I'm speaking to the PSWs now. I wasn't lying. This individual who's running HSCPOA is a genuine individual who actually cares about the personal support worker. And for a lot of you guys that I talk to or that you've seen me over the years, I don't think this has ever happened that I have said that about someone who was heading something for PSWs in relation to government. So Trevor, thank you so much for coming on PSW podcast today. I think this hopefully has cleared up some of the myths surrounding HSCPOA, and maybe brought on some new questions that we can answer next month when you join me yet again on PSW
Yes.
podcast. This is going to be something, PSWs, that we are going to continue to do. I think it's important that you guys do know that your association is actively working with them, with the HSCPOA, and the HSCPOA is genuine in their goal to really raise the bar for the PSW. So I think this was a really great conversation. So I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, all right, PSWs, as you guys well know, if you're not a member yet, head over to our page, become a member. If you're not a member, you're not protected. Also, get over to HSCPOA because that's another place that you can be protected and, of course, protect those in